We tend to vilify technology these days for our misery. We all complain about social media, for example, and then go into infinite scrolling loops anyways. But today, this episode will offer you a new way to look at tech in your everyday life. And my guest will challenge us all to find agency in how we use it in our lives. Together, we'll examine our relationship with technology, and I think this episode's content will surprise you because my guest has a very special relationship with technology, starting off as an engineer for an ads company that got acquired by then Twitter. And that ultimately led him to quit his job and go seeking for his own gumption and fulfillment in life and how he wants to use technology in his career. And that involved him being lost for a few years, where he was able to question that relationship and be able to push the edge of what he could do with technology, going outside of his comfort zone of working with software and doing a wide range of things that we will cover today, from him going to work with refugees in Lebanon to sending a GoPro camera into the stratosphere, which is a very interesting story. And then more recently, the commitment and excitement for him to start taking apart random objects in his home just to see how they work. And my guest today, Islam El Ashi, he's a Palestinian-Canadian tech whiz who I met in San Francisco and have had the pleasure of living with him for a few years. And I learned a lot about him. He now lives in Switzerland, where he works on a distributed ledger company called Dfinity, and it is essentially the world's biggest contributor to the internet computer blockchain. Now, this episode is not about his work per se, but about all the experiments he's done to redefine his relationship with tech between both jobs and how that contributed to his overall fulfillment. We do have an exclusive segment about his work at Dfinity and what they exactly do and what the internet computer blockchain is. But this is going to be added as one of the exclusive segments and not really included in this episode. I hope you enjoy this interview. It's a very refreshing look on technology and ultimately gives us the chance to redefine that relationship rather than complain about the forces that be and how they're forcing technology upon us. So without further ado, here's Islam El Ashi, and this is episode number 22, our relationship with technology.
Nowadays, manufacturers are heavily incentivized to not make a phone repairable. It's much better for the big players that you just replace your new phone rather than fixing it yourself or understanding how it works. Seeing that this barrier is only a barrier that I put in for myself was enough of an inspiration. So I ended up looking at some of the small things that I have in my house, like my keyboard and my mouse, and understanding how they work. And now other more complex things, they seem to be much simpler to tinker with, because once you start gaining insight into how some of these pieces work, it's like a snowball effect. Now you feel like you have this magic force that you can use to try to disassemble everything and to try to understand it. And you see how it's all gets beautifully interconnected and how everything is really made up of the same stuff in a way.
When you were leaving San Francisco and you decided to become an astronaut for a few weeks and figure out how to send a small GoPro camera outside of the stratosphere.
I liked it because it was the first time I really think it was something that was not software. And I definitely learned how to do hardware projects the hard way. So I ended up actually doing 3 attempts in order to get this camera into space. And I think it was one of the very few moments in my life where I was screaming like a 5-year-old from how excited I was. We were both were.
What would you encourage the audience to do? Something that they can start doing in a simple way today to start rebuilding that relationship with technology? Yo, you made it. My name is Omar and I'm honored to welcome you to the Gumcast, where we have deep conversations about the human spirit and what keeps us going Despite the shittiness of it all, our goal is to encourage you to feel seen, heard, and understood. So tune in for real and raw conversations and become part of them on findgumption.com. Islam.
Omar,
Ahlan wa sahlan.
welcome to Switzerland.
Thank you. Welcome to the Gumcast.
It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to record this. It's really nice to share space with you too.
Yes, in a very literal way, we're stuck in a 2x2 foot closet trying to record here to avoid the echo. So hopefully the audio quality comes well to the audience. This is how much we sacrifice for our listeners.
We are standing in what feels like a phone booth, which is literally your closet. We are recording this in your closet in Switzerland.
Yes, and I had to empty it out just for this.
Yes, thank you so much for accommodating me for the past couple of days.
It is my pleasure. It is my absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed the beautiful day we spent in the mountains, even though it was snowing and cold, but we did enjoy a good time in the spa. So
absolutely. And if we can just draw an image of what it feels like to even just be in your apartment. First of all, Switzerland is indeed the most beautiful place I've ever seen. I'm overloaded on nature, but from your apartment here, we look to the left, we see the fucking Alps.
yes,
Yeah, with the snowy tops. And then to the right, we see the lake of Zug.
Zug, yes. So I live in a small town called Zug, which is about 20 minutes away from Zurich.
Yes, and then from the other side of your apartment, we see these beautiful velvet green rolling hills, unlike any green I've ever seen before.
Lots of farms out here. So you can actually see on good days, you can see cows and sheep roaming around. So yes, I do feel very fortunate to be living here.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to be able to travel to Switzerland and hang out with you and have conversations like we used to have back in San Francisco, when we used to be very literal roommates.
Yes, we shared the exact same room.
It was a little bigger than the closet that we're sharing in right now. We shared the room for quite a bit of time. That was like 6 years ago?
Yeah. Has it been that long? Yeah, 2016, 2017?
Yeah, it has been that long.
Time flies. Yes, for 15 months we shared the same room.
For 15 months. And that's, so it's been great since you left. People stopped thinking I'm gay. People don't ask me who's the big spoon and the small spoon. I think that was the favorite joke. And I would always respond by, no, we like to fork, not spoon. And then that would usually quiet down the conversation. So.
I remember actually the day I moved in with Omar. And I think it was a Sunday. And then at the time you were contracting, so you flew out to San Diego for work.
Right.
You came back 4 days later, and then I flew out for a conference for a week. And then I came back, and then you were gone for 2 weeks. So I moved in, and I think I met you, even though we were in the same room, I met you maybe 40 days later. Yes, I think we were sharing the same room, but also we weren't. It wasn't that kind of room sharing also.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, we were both working in tech in different capacities, in different ways, in different industries. But technology was the reason why we were able to both have income and also travel so much that sharing a room was feasible. It almost felt like a perfect scenario that people can't usually leverage, but we were able to do that. And technology is also the theme of today. During that time, there was just so much experimentation that we were doing. And I learned so much from you and how you approach your relationship with technology. And that's why I say it's really fortunate to be back in the space with you, to see you operate and remember that. And it so happened today that we didn't even have a technology problem, but my bag broke.
Yeah.
And we had a very interesting situation.
Oh, I had to carry it all the way up the hill.
Yes, that's literally while walking from the train to your house, my handle broke. And I felt like, so this morning before going on the beautiful hike to the spa, we had this conversation about what we should do about it, because I'm hopefully going to be able to leave tomorrow with my luggage, which is broken. But I was very hell-bent on going and buying a new one. And you saw this as an opportunity to fix the bag, which then resulted in a bunch of hacking. And we reached a good prototype, I would say. I must say, I am pretty satisfied with this prototype, that I might start promoting it as the new way of traveling. So for the listeners, we actually ended up using, so the handle of Omar's backpack broke. And then what we ended up doing is we are now using my broomstick, which we inserted into the bag, and that
doubles as the handle.
And it's an extendable.
And it's an extendable broomstick too. So
it goes up and down.
And so you get to travel and you get to clean the world doing it. So
let's hold off on all judgment until I get on the train tomorrow. I'll let you know if it survives going down the hill. But there's only one way to know right now. So this was an excellent intro. I'm already having a lot of fun, and I would love to invite you to start off this episode by helping the audience understand your very special relationship with technology with a story.
Yes, absolutely. So as you mentioned already, Omar, we met when we were both living in the Bay Area. And at the time, I moved to the Bay Area to join a tech startup that is working in ad tech. So we were helping big consumers like Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue. We would help them essentially track you online so that we can serve you more relevant ads. So if you've ever had this experience where you would see something online, then you would find it stalking you everywhere, that's what we do. And so after doing a few years of that, I really felt like I wanted to connect with technology in a more meaningful way. I knew I loved technology. I loved being in this space, but I wanted to connect in something that was more meaningful to me. And it took me a while to figure out what that would be. I ended up leaving San Francisco and the US searching for what that would be. And only a few weeks later, actually, I ended up connecting with the UNHCR in Lebanon. So I ended up moving to Beirut for a few months. And there we were working on tools for the UN to provide aid more efficiently to the influx of Syrian refugees. This was back in summer 2017. And so I feel like between both of these experiences, I've seen technology being used in various spectrums. And I could see how technology can be used as a tool for good and a tool for evil, even though I don't like to use these terms very much. But it's really a very powerful tool that you can use it in, you can put it in whatever direction you want to go to.
So what was that project about when you got to Lebanon? What were you trying to accomplish, and why did it attract you in the first place?
So I wanted to do, when I left San Francisco, I wanted to do something different. I think it was more from the angle of exploration. So I didn't really know what I was getting into. And I must admit, going to Beirut and working with the UN, it was a bit of a culture shock in terms of the mindset. I think the mindset of San Francisco is there's a problem and you really need to fix it. But the types of problems that you deal with at the scale of a war that's happening in Syria and a refugee problem, they're a bit almost too big to think of it as a problem that you just fix because it's too big to address. And so really the strategy of the UN was to try to contain the problem as much as possible. And so what we were doing is we were helping the UN with tools so they are able to follow what the refugees are saying on social media. And then they can know if refugees are having issues. So if a lot of people are complaining, for example, about health facilities, hospitals, or whatever that would be, then they get the signal that this is something that they need to dedicate more resources to. And so this replaces a whole team that would have been literally sitting there all day reading about what the refugees are saying online so that they can figure out how to allocate the resources. So this helps them dedicate or allocate the resources much more efficiently. Shit. And we have a booth situation.
The closet is collapsing. It's the UN. They're tapping into the mic.
Yes. And I would say, to be honest, though, that I'm not sure if the work that we did with the UN, though, was that impactful in the long term. But I would say that what really stuck out to me at the time is seeing how innovative people can be with technology, even though they don't fit in the tech stereotype. So one example that really resonates with me, I remember one time I was going into the refugee camps, one of the refugee camps in a place called the Bekaa Valley, which is in the east of Lebanon. And there I was really curious about how the refugees get internet access because they are outdoors, they're staying in tents, and mobile data in Lebanon, at least at the time, was super expensive. So I was really curious how they're able to...
What year was that?
This was summer 2017. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up arranging a visit to a camp, and there I ended up meeting one of the people there, one of the micro entrepreneurs that was living in the camp, and it turned out that he has become the de facto ISP of the camp. So what he ended up doing is he made a deal with a supermarket that was about 200 meters away. He made that supermarket get an internet package. They installed a satellite dish on top of that supermarket and another one in the camp. They managed to somehow beam the signal between them. And then he used solar-powered routers within the camp in order to distribute internet access.
Wow.
Yes, and he would put this username and password and he would change it every month so that people would come back every month and pay him the fees.
So he has solar-powered routers in every village or home?
So the whole camp is maybe 600 square meters.
Okay.
Or whatever that is in feet. Sorry, American listeners. So
I've been living almost 10 years in America. I still don't know what a foot is.
I always get confused.
Or Fahrenheit. Let's not go there.
Yeah, so I think it goes to show when there's a need and there's a will, that there is a way. And this person is not a technologist, but he did manage to figure out a solution to a problem that he has and to make some money out of it as well, which is something that I really respect. But what struck me about him is that there was nothing striking about him. So he was a very normal person. He was living, maybe the part that's not so normal is that he was living in a tent and he had 5 children in that tent along with his wife, so not the most comfortable lifestyle. But what really struck me is that he's a very normal person. He didn't get a special education. He doesn't fit a particular tech stereotype at all. I think it's a normal person being put into circumstances where you have a problem and you need to solve it. And at the same time, you don't have an easy way out of going to the store and just getting the solution, a packaged solution to your problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being in that circumstance really drives the innovation in every one of us. So I think that's the remarkable thing about him, is that he was just as remarkable as everyone else.
Well, you, my friend, are indeed a remarkable person. And one thing I'd like to segue into is some of the video projects that you have been creating, which we'll add the links to this episode. And I have some questions about some of these videos to come up, one of which I lived with you. But before we get into the mindset of breaking things apart, seeing how they work is something you mentioned you want to do some videos on. And I think a lot of us can relate to wanting to open the toy or open the thing that we're playing with, and then we break it somehow, and then we get disenchanted by this idea that we can fix things. And so back to our relationship with technology being passive, you want to do a video series that I think would be very inspiring to kind of challenge people like me that want to go to the store, and then challenge them to say, okay, no, you can actually fix things. So what's some of the inspiration behind this video series, and what are some of the objects in your house that you want to rip apart and back together?
Yes. So I think in terms of inspiration, so I've been looking at technology today. I do feel a little bit frustrated, even though, and maybe technology is a bit of a broad term, but if you look at a particular example, let's say mobile phones. If you look at mobile phones today, they're extremely powerful tools and they're seamless to use and they're a necessity in every stretch of imagination. But I'm also very frustrated at how phones have become, in the sense that they've become this very shiny object that it's very useful, but on the other hand, it's also very unrepairable. You can't really open a modern day phone unless you have some very special tools. And nowadays, manufacturers are heavily incentivized to not make a phone repairable. It's much better for the big players that you just replace your new phone rather than fixing it yourself or understanding how it works. And so I think it's out of that frustration when I was looking for something new to buy because my phone was out of, the battery had issues, and I was very frustrated that I just couldn't replace the battery myself. Then I felt the inspiration that, okay, there is this barrier between me and understanding this particular piece of technology, and I am choosing to keep that barrier there. And really trying to put in the effort to try to understand how that technology works, and seeing that this barrier is only a barrier that I put in for myself was enough of an inspiration. So I ended up looking at some of the small things that I have in my house, like my keyboard and my mouse, and understanding how they work. And now other more complex things, they seem to be much simpler to tinker with, because once you start gaining insight into how some of these pieces work, it's like a snowball effect. Now you feel the inspiration of getting this. Now you feel like you have this magic force that you can use to try to disassemble everything and to try to understand it. And you see how it's all gets beautifully interconnected, and how everything is really made up of the same stuff in a way. So maybe this also gets into the second question of what are some of the things that I plan to disassemble. I'll start with some of the small things like mouse and keyboard. Maybe I'll get into my TV or monitor. Maybe I'll get into the fridge someday, but maybe when I'm doing a water fast, that'll be an ideal time for that.
Please try to disassemble the washing machine downstairs, because it's given me a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with the washing machine. Sorry about that.
I'd encourage you to start with it.
Switzerland is usually perfect, but for some reason my washing machine is not working.
I think it's my Egyptianness.
Yeah,
it's just
sorry, Omar.
Egyptian.
You'll have to live with dirty clothes for the next few days.
I'm used to things not working. It's okay. So I really hope that you make these videos, because it's really interesting. It's very thought-provoking. And earlier, you and I were talking about the semantics and technology being this thing that is out of our grasp, right? And we see it as a profession, right? Like medicine or engineering. And I love how you mentioned that we create our own barriers to engage with it in a different way. And so I really hope that these videos manifest. And I want to take us to the time when you were leaving San Francisco and you decided to become an astronaut for a few weeks and figure out how to send a small GoPro camera outside of the stratosphere, which is fascinating. And you have an incredibly well done YouTube video that I'm going to post. But I'm really excited. I love telling that story on your behalf. So I'd love to hear it from you and have you relate to the audience. And I think it was one of the most fascinating things I've seen you do. And I've seen you do many fascinating things, but it's also the memory you left me with while leaving San Francisco, literally quite a bang. And tell us about the process you went through. And first, let's start. Where did this crazy idea come from?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite projects. It is credit where it's due. It has been done before, so by no means stretching the boundaries of science with this project, but I was definitely stretching my own boundaries. So I've been reading about this space balloon idea, and maybe to back up, the idea is that you would have a balloon, and this balloon, you can attach a payload to it. This could be a camera or whatever it is that you want to send, like garlic bread or whatever comes to your mind. And so then you would fill the balloon with helium, and as the balloon floats, the helium expands. And at some point, in our case, it was around 100,000 feet, the helium has become so expanded that the balloon ends up exploding. And so then the payload falls, and then you can pick it up. And so we ended up attaching a camera to videotape that entire experience. And we also attached a satellite tracker to be able to identify where the camera is. So this was meant to be a work project or with work colleagues, so I asked them to get involved. So it was certainly a team effort. I liked it because it was the first time I really think there was something that was not software. And I definitely learned how to do hardware projects the hard way. So I ended up actually doing 3 attempts in order to get this camera into space.
Not everyone from the team kept showing up with every try, right?
No.
So there was also like this.
You were down to 2 people in the last try.
How many people were in try 1?
We were 5.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
And in try 2, how many did you lose the first one?
We did 1 try in one day, and then try 2 and 3 were on the same day. And so that was actually my last day in the US and San Francisco. Wow. So it was a Tuesday, and then there was only one other person that managed to take that day off and come with me. So we're only down to 2 people for the second and third attempt.
It's such an incredible thing to see happen, especially that moment when the camera drops. And I can't wait for people listening to watch the video, but tell us a bit about your process and about how your resilience to go through these attempts in something that is foreign. I imagine after 2 attempts and people not showing up, it's really easy to give up also. Where did you find hope, and what was your process in keeping hope?
Yeah, so I think the process that we started it with was the process that I was always used to with writing software, which is there isn't much of a process. You have this agile mentality where you try something and then it doesn't work and you fix it. But then only when you do your first attempt and you realize, oh, actually fixing it and doing another attempt is really time consuming, and you can't just try things out and see what happens. So with these types of projects, you have to be much more methodical about how you set it up so that things actually work the way you intend things to. You can't build a rocket ship by just trial and error like this. You really need you need a more sound foundation and a more sound process. So one of the things that we got completely wrong, for instance, is that when you have the balloon, you need to attach something. You're required by law in the US to attach something so that airplanes can see this object. And so we put a radar reflector, and to build, it sounds complicated, but it isn't. So the way that you can have a radar reflector is you can put in some kind of shiny material that can bounce the radar waves. And so we had this cardboard box that we assembled in some configuration, and then we wrapped it with this aluminum foil, or we glued this aluminum foil around the cardboard. The problem that we realized once we got to the launch pad is that, one, the cardboard was too heavy, and two, the glue was even heavier. We put in, I think, 500 milliliters of glue, which is a lot of weight, considerably. And so that wasn't really something that we factored into when we calculated how much helium we needed into that balloon. And so that was why the first attempt failed. The balloon couldn't even take off from all the weight. And so we really needed to go back to the hypothetical drawing board and figure out a better solution, like to reduce the weight and to make sure that our calculation for the helium was accurate. And so what we ended up doing in V2 is, instead of having the cardboard and the glue, we actually used, so for the rope, we ended up using a dental floss, which barely weighs anything, instead of having a cord. And then we used a bag, and that bag we put in a very small paper bag, and there we added small bits of aluminum foil, shredded aluminum foil, so that it can bounce the waves from all directions. And so that got us from a weight of, let's say, 1.5 pounds, or 7, I'm trying to be more American in my weights now, from 1.5 pounds to maybe, this is where my American units end.
I still don't know what pounds are either.
Yeah, so I think I got it down from maybe, just the radar reflector alone, we got it down from maybe 0.7 kilos to maybe 40 grams. I think that was the difference in scale in terms of how we optimized the weight. And we realized that also our helium calculation was wrong. So we made sure that we put in enough helium for the next run.
Okay. And one of the moments in the video that I love so much is that after we see the camera go up and go down, it didn't fall in a place, it didn't land back on Earth in a place that you expected it to. So it landed on some private property.
So we knew the direction that it was going to go to, but of course we couldn't predict exactly where it was going to fall. So I think it landed in the right ballpark that we were expecting, but yes, it did end up landing on someone's backyard, and we had to smuggle our way into it to retrieve it.
So what was going on in your mind when you were jumping that gate and running towards it?
I actually didn't think too much about the private property situation. I was so thrilled that we found this place, or that we found the payload. And I was very thrilled that the box landed safely, because one of the things that we had to engineer ourselves as part of this V2 configuration, we wanted the payload, this box that we had, to land softly, not just for the safety of the camera inside, but also for the safety of people, just in case. And so we ended up using my umbrella, or a piece of the fabric of my umbrella, as a parachute. So it was tied into the box in some configuration such that as soon as the balloon explodes, then this piece of textile will kick in and would act as a parachute to try to make it land more softly. So I was very happy and pleasantly surprised that everything was intact and that actually worked, even though it was just a plain old umbrella that I got from Walgreens, I think, one of these days. So yes, I think but I think at the time we were really over the moon, and I remember this moment very vividly when we were driving back, and then Nick, my friend working on this project, he opened his laptop, he popped this SD card in when we saw the footage of what it was like. And I think it was one of the very few moments in my life where I was screaming like a 5-year-old from how excited I was. We both were, and we were both very
An incredible moment in the
Yes,
and the video.
So we almost had a car crash from how excited we were. But yes, that was I think I flew out of the US the second day, and it was only when I left that I put all the pieces together. But it was definitely a very memorable ending.
It would have been very ironic if you crashed your car. You landed a payload from the stratosphere safely and crashed the car. So I'm really glad that didn't happen. And I encourage everyone to watch the video, and there's a bunch of other really cool videos about you pushing the limits and experimenting, and just like also expanding your knowledge of the body and knowledge in general. And I think you have another video about your Vipassana retreat.
Yes, 10-day silent retreat that I did in Sri Lanka in 2019. And since that year, I've been going pretty consistently. I'm going to one in London in a few weeks, actually, over Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, and then there is another video about you trying to take a course in, was it microbiology?
Yes, biology. So it was an introductory biology course. It was the one by MIT, taught by a professor called Eric Lanyard, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He was one of the people involved in the Human Genome Project. He is a very inspiring instructor. So there's this 16-week course on edX that MIT provides for free. And I thought this was during the COVID times. I thought it would be a fun challenge to try to finish one of these courses in 1 week as opposed to the 16 weeks.
And you documented that through a really interesting video also. And I think it was about the time that you moved to Switzerland, right?
Yes, it was only, I think, two months afterwards, 2-3 months afterwards. And yes, I really enjoyed that experience. It was an experience that I wanted to try out, not just for myself, but I also wanted to share with the world. And what I really wanted to explore was how far can you go if you push yourself in one very specific direction for 1 week? And I was very pleasantly surprised with how much one could do in 1 week. And I felt that now we have this tool in our toolbox where if you feel strongly about something, yes, you can dedicate just 1 week of your life to it and actually make some very significant strides in that field. So I think that was the motivation that I was hoping to share from that video, that you can really accomplish a lot in 1 week. And you don't necessarily have to go that extreme, but it's an experiment to see how far one can go in a short time span to explore a field that is not in their field of expertise.
Doing all these experiments with technology, how does that impact your day-to-day? And how does that lens of technology being something that you can manipulate and almost looking...
I think I use the term
amplification.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What would you encourage the audience to do? Something that they can start doing in a simple way today to start rebuilding that relationship with technology?
Yeah, I don't feel like in a position to give advice to people. I think giving good advice is really hard. But I could say that I personally draw the line for myself. I think, as we all know, technology can be used for good and can be used for bad. What good and bad is very subjective. But I think where I draw the line for me personally about whether a piece of technology is useful for me is whether it is amplifying my life or whether it is replacing my life. So a typical example of a technology that can replace your life is some of these infinite scrolling sinkholes. So if I find myself spending so much time on these social platforms and not really spending my time connecting with real people, that would be an example of technology replacing my life. Whereas if I'm using a piece of technology to, like what we're doing now, to have a discussion and to share it with other listeners, or to be able to explore a scientific topic, or to be able to engage with other people socially, then I think that's an example of a great technology that I would like to use personally. But I think it's very subjective, so it really depends on one's circumstances and what one wants out of technology. Think about what is it that you want to get out of technology, for whatever definition of technology that is to you. That could be phones, that could be social media, VR, rockets, whatever that would be. And is it currently amplifying your life? And if it's not, what are the parts of it that it isn't amplifying your life? It's really taking you away from living. And I think being aware of what are the parts or in what way technology is amplifying your life, that can really help shed light into what kind of technology that you want to invest in your daily life. That could be your phone, that could be a computer, that could be a smart lamp, that could be a smart thermostat, whatever the pieces of technology that you interact with. So that's maybe my guiding principle when I try to think about what technology would I like to use. So, for example, I have been walking around with a very dumb phone for the past few months to experiment. Okay, what are really the parts of a mobile phone that I personally care about that helps amplify my life? And that was quite a good experience for me to understand how I interact with this piece of technology. I have been gravitating more and more, for example, to like e-ink displays. I got this e-ink tablet not too long ago, and I use it as my tool for reading and for consuming content that I like, because it is the simplest medium that I could find that was not distracting and helping me do what it is that I want to do. So it's really a matter of figuring out what you want out of technology as opposed to letting technology decides that for you.
It brings us back to the theme of focusing and what we're able to do when we focus on something. And I totally get that no distraction kind of mentality, where our phones and our tablets and laptops have so many things that really pull on us. And so I also use e-ink typewriter to focus my morning writing and not have any email pop up or any kind of browsing tendencies even that I have for research. Sometimes I'll be writing and then I go into a rabbit hole of research that then leads me to my Gmail or Facebook or the news or something. And it's really interesting how we can take away from technology and then have it amplify our lives, which is a really interesting point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We tend to think of the future of technology as more and better and faster. And we don't think of it as a future where we can repair our existing technology and interact with it in more meaningful ways and get deeper, literally, into the technology. And I love what you said about enjoyment too. So we think of technology that connects people as social media, whereas in many ways, social media is creating so much loneliness. And instead, there is two guys bonding over fixing a bag, right? But when you were living in San Francisco, you used a laser cutter to create this like cardboard version of an enchanted forest in our room. And then you got black light, and we would gather together in the kitchen, and there was also a portrait of Jerusalem, which is still in my Oakland house, by the way, made out, again, was it a laser cutter that you used also?
Yes. That was walnut wood, though. That was the cardboard for the Jerusalem.
Okay. Yes. And there was, how art also came out of that. And this idea of technology bringing us together that way is really beautiful. And so thanks for showing me a model of that constantly. And the things that we've created still exist. And they were also, again, the same spirit of experimentation, of sending something to space.
So first and foremost, just a comment about the gatherings that you're referring to. These were definitely one of my favorite gatherings when we were painting together, and we as humans connecting with each other to produce something. I think that's something that just gives me so much joy.
Same.
Maybe we should stop thinking about the word, or maybe dropping the word technology from our vocabulary altogether, and think about abstract labels on things like technology. You're drawing these boundaries, which can be useful in certain conversations. But because this word defines this boundary and it's so abstract, and if you're not working in like software or hardware, it can feel very intimidating in a way. But if you really look at things for what they are, that, okay, this is a phone and this is a TV and this is a mouse, there is no such thing as the word technology, then I think you can see things in a way that is much more clear. There isn't a big vague word obstructing you from trying to tinker with it and to break it apart and to see how it's made and so on. So I'm hoping to see more, maybe I'll say like education in that route, or at least more awareness that, yes, technology is not this cloud thing that you interact with, but technology is something that it's not even confined to software or hardware as one typically tends to believe. But I think what we did today with the backpack, for example, with fixing it with a broomstick, we did use technology in some form. So it really boils down to trying to take things to first principles and to really build that knowledge base. And I think it's really enjoyable. I think most people would actually really enjoy the process of trying to take something apart and try to break it down to first principles. And really, once you start, you would really get, and you'd have these moments every once in a while where you feel like you've gained this new superpower. Oh, now I can actually take this screwdriver and take this thing apart, and I can fix this capacitor, or I can put this broomstick, and now I can do this superpower that was not possible to me 30 minutes ago. And I think there's really great joy in that. That would be the dream for me, to see more of that movement coming about.
It's a very radical ending from a very radical man. Denouncing the word technology is something that's making much more sense to me today after our conversations, much more than in the morning. And I hope the audience also have taken something from this conversation around how they view technology and the lens through which we interact with it in our day-to-day life. Slim, thank you so much for just being who you are, for the magic you bring into my life, and for being on the Gomcast and sharing all these stories with us.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me, Omar.
Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Maybe people should look into broomsticks more often. I think there are more use cases to broomsticks than people think, as we're going to find out shortly.
Yes, we will report back in 12 hours. Thanks, man. This was awesome. Hey guys, this is Omar again. I hope that this episode has challenged you enough and inspired you to start looking at how technology can amplify or detract from your life. And one of the things that Islam mentioned, the ways that technology can amplify our life, is by sharing conversations like these with the world and expressing ourselves to others. And that is precisely going to be the topic of the season 2 finale episode, which is coming up next. And it's going to be episode 23, where I bring back the co-producer of season 1, Paul Kist, and we both interview the fantastical Stacy Blank, who is a facilitator of human expression and has worked with teams and individuals in helping them really find their voice. And she does that with a bunch of things that she has learned through her journey in improv, both acting and facilitating. And so she will teach us a few things about self-expression, and together the three of us are going to really push our comfort zone, and we'll tell you how we were able to do that also in the episode. So we're going to have an episode that is very juicy coming up, and it's going to be longer than usual, and I can't wait to share it with you. So stay tuned for episode 23 about self-expression with Stacy Blank and Paul Kist. I'll see you then.